Leeds, Leeds, Leeds. What is happening? Welcome to Series 6 of Working Hours, an oral history podcast about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. Working Hours aims to record 1,000 loiners, that's people from Leeds, over the course of this, the most important decade in the history of the human species, and ask them about what they do all day and hear how they feel about it. My name is Simon, and this is all my fault. My mission here is to try to map out what my city, Leeds, a city that has declared a climate emergency, did during humanity's biggest emergency. On Working Hours, we hear how loiners have, are, and will be coping with our multiple and expanding crises during their day-to-day working hours. Can we turn things around? We'll find out. To tell this story, I need loiners like you, dear listener. I need people in Leeds or people from Leeds to come on this podcast and tell me about what they do and let me record how this decade affects us. These are long-form interviews meant to challenge the short attention span content economy. That means they aren't always easy listening, but in my view, they are all worth listening to. They all tell us something about our guest, our city, and our time, not to mention something of what it's like to do that job and how someone got into that job. You're helping this project right now by being a listener, and I'd love for you to consider becoming a guest or a supporter of this project. Thank you for listening to this episode. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I didn't know. And I think that's the, it is a really fascinating question because I think that the stock answer is everybody's going to look to, I wanted to be an astronaut, or I wanted to be a racing car driver, or I wanted to play for Liverpool. And I didn't want to be any of those childlike, esoterically wonderful things. I needed to be something that my family said I should be. And so my mother's side of the family were immigrants. They were refugees. They came from Eastern Europe during the end of the Second World War. And very much, I think, that idea of being driven to be educated and to make something of yourself and to go into a profession. And so I didn't have a view on what I wanted to be, but I very clearly knew what my family wanted me to be. And that would be something professional and probably something in the line of doctor, lawyer, that sort of, architect, anything, but anything educated. So university education and then one of the serious professions. And actually, as I got older, that was narrowed down for me and it essentially became a pathway towards law school. And that was that set of decisions was not made for me, but encouraged. And I didn't really have a great deal of say in that. So I reviewed the questions before coming here, and something that I'd actually forgotten about. So this is interesting as well. So my 16th birthday, my grandfather gave me the registration documents for the army.
For the what, sorry?
For the army.
Right, yeah.
And he said, "You're 16, go and be a man."
Yeah.
So either go into a profession or go and fight for your country. And that was it. That was the route I was supposed to take. And it wasn't until I decided that wasn't, that there was a gap in all of that for me. And I made a decision midway through A-levels that I needed something different. I needed a creative outlet. I needed to move into the arts. I wanted to be an illustrator and typographer. And it wasn't until I realised that I was able to start, I think, dictating my own terms. And it was a it was a really challenging set of conversations, and caused huge amount of friction with the family.
So what did you do with the army offer? Did that just get parked, or was that something that you had to sort of seriously deal with, or was it like, I'm going to law school anyway? Or
yeah, and I think that was it. At least I had another avenue, which was, I'm going to university. I'm going to go and do a profession. But yeah, my grandfather was very definitely get a haircut.
Yeah.
Get enlisted.
Yeah. The stereotypical sort of dad from from the 1960s onwards.
So he
long-haired, work shy, always be in the bloody army, treats this place like a hotel.
Yeah, very much so. And I have some sympathy with him because he had fought. He had fought in the Second World War. He'd fought as an extremely young man. He'd lost huge amounts of his family. He had been in detention. He had endured the concentration camps. He had escaped and walked thousands of miles in order to, put distance between him and the enemy. He was stoic.
Yeah.
And, I think that's the best way of describing him.
Yeah.
And that was through lived experience. But, a really, really different generation to anything that you see now. There's so little of that. I think, we pay lip service to it, and I see it in some of the rhetoric at the moment.
But it happens over there now, doesn't it? It doesn't. Yeah. It doesn't reach as far as back here necessarily. Did you just sort of start with a law degree?
No, so I made my A-level selections on the basis that I was going to go and do law, and then about 6 months in, so 2/3 of the way through the first year, just so deeply unhappy. And
is it just like, this is boring, or it doesn't make sense, or I just don't want to do it?
Just don't want to do it. It didn't work for me.
Yeah. Because it's not your choice as well, ultimately. Yeah.
I had absolutely no desire to be involved in any of it. So I had English and sociology, and then I had because English would have stood me in good stead anyway, and sociology would have stood me in good stead. And then I had a science and a language, and I'm going to be honest, I was rubbish at the language. And I just didn't. The science was there to make up the numbers. I was getting nothing out of it. And actually,
was it just a science A-level then? It wasn't a particular...
It was biology, yeah. Because my mother was a biologist. And, why would you not do that? It was biology or physics. And I didn't have maths for the physics because my dad was a physicist. I missed the art. I was deeply immersed in comic book culture. At the time, I was deeply immersed in album art culture.
So are we talking like 90s here?
So, I'm born 1973.
Right.
I can say that.
Yeah.
So, yes, it would have been 1990 and then onwards. So, we'd had the beginnings of the acid house era, which I was really quite taken with, and all of the stuff that was coming out of that. There was Manchester, all of the artwork.
There's
around
also
that.
Simultaneously developments in printing and graphic design and computers and computer-aided design that's going on as well, and all those things that are coming out, and all that imagery that, okay, so we'd had the sort of wireframe computer graphic imagery for, I don't know, sort of 10, 15 years at that point maybe. But they could do new stuff now. They could do curves, and they could do things that interlocked and did all sorts of crazy stuff. So, that's an explosion of art at the time when you're ready to and hungry for it.
There was, I introduced somebody to this the other week as well. There was a magazine from the US called Ray Gun, and it was a culture and lifestyle magazine, but I think it's Dave Carson was the art editor on that, and as his typography was just like nothing else that had ever been seen. And he had this very broken mechanical sort of approach to design and typography mixed with a very formal approach, and just really smashing the two together. And you saw some of it in things like the album cover for Durruti Column. They did Guitar and Other Machines, and Joy Division, where there was no longer this reliance on being a good painter, or just photography. There were so many other things coming in, and I desperately wanted to be involved in that. I really wanted to break conventions because I wasn't. I went to had a conventional educational path. I went to a highly conventional school. Probably one of the last schools where you still stood up when a teacher walked into the room. Nobody had a first name. Everybody was surname only. It was exceptionally formal. Something my sort of whole upbringing to that point had been exceptionally formal. And yet I was really interested in counterculture. And some of the underground art movements that were taking shape, and there's sort of an expansion on this punk ethic of anybody can do it.
Yeah.
Here's 3 chords, go form a band. Suddenly, if you had access to a photocopier, you could print.
Yeah.
You had access to a cheap computer, and they weren't cheap, but you could create a publishing house, and people were doing that. And you go back to Fact 51, the factory sort of output. All of that was just found objects, found imagery, found iconography, rebuilt, repurposed, put together again, and that excited me. That excited me.
Yeah.
Going through books and referencing case law did not excite me. So that was it. I turned around and said, I don't want to do this. I want to change my options. I want to go do something else. I'm going to go to art college, and I dealt with the fallout for years off that.
So had you started? Oh no, you were doing the A levels.
Yeah.
So did you finish the A level in it, or
no? I switched midway through.
Yeah.
I mean, the school had never seen anything like it. That was, that was the other thing. Again, very formal, and there was grammar school. There was an expectation that everybody that left there, bar the small handful, would go on to professional degrees, and I was earmarked for a professional degree. All my tuition pass, everybody assumed that I'd be going to. Yeah.
They're like, you're destroying a brilliant career already, even though you've not started it.
And whilst there was, so I had to interview essentially to get this change into effect, and then they had to work out how they were going to do it because they'd never seen it before. It was just.
Well, you've changed your mind once. What's to prevent you from changing your mind again?
Yeah, just everybody thought it was the most ridiculous decision they'd ever heard, and it's
just like the logical, practical. Well, I could spend 2 years doing this that I hate, that I'll probably do badly in actually because I don't like it, or I can stop now and try something else and not waste as much time.
Yeah,
that seems very logical.
Yeah, I think that you look at it now with hindsight, and that's definitely, why would you not allow that to take place?
But it wasn't about what you want to do, it's what you should be doing.
Yeah, 100%.
You're listening to Series 6, Episode 20, and to my guest, Michael Guy. This is another in-person recording at the usual place. I should tell you which meeting room I was in, shouldn't I? I've recorded in them all now. It's the same one as the Tasty interview, the one at the back. You know the one. This was recorded on the 12th of June 2025. Hello, colleagues. How good has this series been? What a shame it all has to come to an end, eh? But not yet. We have another banger for you. Michael Guy is a digital strategist with a background spanning leadership, business analysis, and accessibility. He spends his time making sense of messy systems. Over the years, he's worked with charities, membership organisations, and SMEs, often at that difficult, slightly tangled stage where everyone knows something needs to change, but no one's quite sure where to start. His role is often about helping teams focus, prioritise, and move forward with confidence rather than deploying technology for the sake of it. A firm advocate for value and impact, Michael translated his approach into his business, Kingsbury Consulting. Michael says, "I get a real buzz from bringing clarity to complex challenges." Right now, he's building a small, focused team that helps organisations plan and deliver digital change. He spent the last few years defining and refining a proprietary strategic framework. He's running workshops and getting under the skin of how things work and don't, and shaping practical roadmaps that will actually get used. Kingsbury Consulting's mission is to help charities, public sector teams, and small businesses make smart decisions, bring the right people along for the ride, and avoid wasting time or budget on the wrong things. He and his company are committed to making high quality, big thinking accessible to everyone, and he's built a business on the principle of leadership of authority through creative collaboration. Right, let's do this. Episode 175 of Working Hours with Michael Guy.
So, right, let's jump into, so it would be a big change. What are you doing now then? So you're not doing law?
I'm not doing law. I'm not going to say that I'm not involved in the creative industries, because I think that that definition has changed hugely. Mm-hmm. And what I do requires a creative mind. Mm-hmm. And I'm grateful for the training that I received in art and design, and then in design and typography, and technical design and typography, because it has given me the opportunity to think in a very certain way. There's a rigour that comes with that, which I've not anticipated. But what I do now is business analysis and strategy for digital ecosystems. Mm-hmm. So technology, platform analysis, taking people's digital environments, mm-hmm. understanding how they are working, understanding where the pain points in those are, seeing where the gaps in business processes are, mm-hmm. and then essentially redesigning those for those companies, putting mm-hmm. together a plan of action that will allow them to take what they have and make the most of it, mm-hmm. and then use that to build and grow for the future. Mm-hmm. And it comes from having been involved in digital design and development for 15 or so years, actually in a client services perspective, so not in a technical role up until relatively recently, but more in a commercial role. Mm. And actually I think the real advantage to that is what I've seen is not only a huge variety of different organisations, so types, customer types, scale, different stages of their life cycle. I've seen how businesses fundamentally operate, and I know what good looks like. I can't necessarily tell you, all the details behind it, but I do recognise good when I see it, and I know how to refine things, and that's through witnessing. There's a huge variety of other companies that are doing things in so many different ways. There is no template, there's no blueprint for how a business needs to work. There's lots of best practice ideas, but there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. And so, client services for a long time, and then into this more strategic led consultancy type approach until I finally took the leap in February and went solo and started just focusing purely on the strategy, so the transformation strategy, and it is transformative. What I'm talking to companies about is giving them an opportunity to make real change within their organisations. And I've got something of a focus for the third sector, charities, NFPs, membership organisations, awarding bodies, because they're typically quite marginalised. And actually, I think there is and I know that there is a real pressure on all businesses at the moment to make more of what they've got. And there's real question marks about how do you focus your spending so that it's actually going to be effective. And I've worked with these businesses for a few years now, and I'm fortunate that I'm at a point where I'm stable enough financially and have enough in the background for me to be able to say I can do this at a level. I'm never going to be Bezos. I'm never going to make millions out of it. I can focus on doing something where the primary objective is to do good rather than to make
money,
tens of millions. And I need to make a living, and it'd be nice to make a profit. And it would be really nice to be able to scale and grow the business offering, and that there is a commercial element to it. I do have that desire to make this a viable, growth-focused consultancy business, but it is doing it ethically and for cause-led organisations, not exclusively, but I have a focus on them, or for SMEs who would normally be excluded from the larger agency ecosystem, and giving them an opportunity to thrive in the current environment, because they're facing pressure from not just the money side of things, but there are people with more cash in the bank than them who are able to access the bigger agencies, the big retainers, and are outstripping them. And so I want to narrow that gap.
There's loads in that. So obviously the next question is the sort of how did you get into it? But I also want to touch upon, I'm going to say it here because I haven't got a notepad and I can't write these things down. Right. So I want to touch upon the technical skills and the technical side of things, like where that came from, and like, did you, are you all self-taught? Was it just an interest that you picked up and developed, or was it something that you had and it's sort of there in the background and then you went and got a qualification to kind of shore it up? The people side of things when you're going into places, because very easy to change something on paper and make lots of improvements, but then when you're actually in the organisation, which is two things, it's a legal entity of bureaucracy and it's a bunch of people, it's the people side is the problem side, where you've got to convince them, get them on board, get them doing the things that you want them to do and working in the ways that you want them to do and change their existing practices. And then I think there's a bit as well of like your approach. I don't know if you've considered it, but there's like a leveraging of skills there. It's like you're making skills that aren't accessible to these areas, sectors and so on, available to them. But that has the network effect of they then have those skills and they can then up those skills, broaden those skills, take them onto other places, develop them more where they are, all of that kind of thing. So there's an upskilling level as well. And I realise that's a bunch of information to hit you with.
So the first two are actually really easy to answer. Qualified by experience.
Right.
That's all it is.
So it's just learning and more interest and experimentation. And
yeah. I'm extremely fortunate in that I've got an exceptionally agile mind. And it's constantly working. Sometimes that's a curse and not a blessing.
Yeah. Don't sleep very well.
No, don't sleep often. Yeah. And there's always something going on. Exceptionally analytical, but actually, the flip of that is that I'm also genuinely very excited by learning. I can't bear the prospect of not finding something new in a day. A day where I don't learn something is not a great day for me. And it just goes into the bank. It just sits there and gets dealt with. And there are times there will be quiet moments where I sit and rationalise it all, and it all gets filed, and I pick the bits, and and the machine in the head just whirs away and just makes sense of it all. But it's qualified by experience, it's exposure. Worked in the first digital agency as an account manager. I had never seen a website built in my life. I had no idea what was going on, and yet within 6 months I was telling the development team where they should be going, not in terms of the detail, but,
stuff they never even thought of as well.
Getting into helping them to ideate and rationalise ways forward. And that was because I was familiar with their ways of working and the challenges that they had, and I could see the patterns, and I could see the patterns in the problems. And the longer I've spent exposed to it, the better that's got. And then as you get more involved in bigger agencies and bigger projects, actually the challenges are identical. They're just those challenges, but at scale. So you then see what adaptations need to be made for them at scale. And there's no real difference. What that actually showed me, and I'll go back a little bit, but what actually showed me is that working with a £5 million budget on an enterprise level program of change requires exactly the same skills as working on a £5,000 budget on a small piece of infrastructural change. Fundamentally, the underlying principles are identical.
Yeah.
So what you have is a whole bunch of people who have these small budgets who can't get access to this big agency thinking because they can't afford it. But actually they would benefit from it because it drives everything. Yeah, it drives everything. So and typically you see, there's very few of me. That's the reality of it. People, there's a risk involved with going solo. There's a risk involved with setting up your own business.
You need the client pool, and people need to know about you. And when the people that know about you have had the work done, if they don't need any more done, you're done.
So I think that's actually so that's interesting, because I think what you often find is that people set up by themselves with a client already. So that's the impetus. They take a client with them, or they acquire one through whatever means, and then they have something to go to, and then they just perpetuate that relationship. There's already a pre-existing relationship there. And then they tend to, and this is a sweeping generalisation, I get that, but they tend to grow within a network that already exists for them. And so that unless they're aggressively expanding outside of that network, that thinking and the approach and all of that good stuff just stays within the same people, stays within the same businesses. It tends not to get exposed out to other people. I have no clients. no pre-existing client base. And I think that there are very few big thinking like me who have taken that leap with absolutely nothing to go to, little budget. So you get access. There is an opportunity to expose people approach for considerably less investment.
Yeah,
but you don't get any less return for it. You get the same output. You get the same outcome. Yeah. But I don't have 400 developers sitting in the back that I've got to feed.
Yeah,
I've just got me and 2 associates at the moment. Hopefully, let's
more if it grows.
Yeah, let's see where we get to in 12 months' time. So there's this concept of I call it, it's big little, and I talk about this. I don't talk about this a lot. I don't talk about this enough because
you think about it a lot.
I think about it a lot, and this goes back to that idea of the punk ethic, the counterculture ethic.
Yeah.
Here's 3 chords, go form a band. Anybody can do it. Yeah. So why doesn't anybody do it? Anybody can have access to this. Why does nobody have access to this? It is possible to think in the same terms as a 20 million turnover business without being a 20 million turnover business. I do the same as I would within that organisation. Mm-hmm. I just have a different commercial requirement to that organisation. So I'm quite keen on this idea of democratisation of access to thinking. And that excited me about the internet. That excited me about the new wave of this hands-on approach to publishing and authoring. I'm genuinely excited about Web 2 when that came out. And for exactly the same reasons, suddenly everybody could look like and think like and behave like and get access to the same data as everybody else. The means of access was opened up. Every time we see but this is it. Every time we see one of these advances, what you find is that big businesses close down the access points.
Yeah.
So we're seeing this with AI at the moment. Everybody's trying to package ChatGPT up into tools. You buy products. This is AI enabled, and so suddenly there's a cost.
It's a rush to enclosure, to put the fences up around it. And
Whereas actually, the real benefits to ChatGPT, amongst others, is that anybody can go and build something amazing with it. And
that's the social benefit, but from the banker's point of view, well, how does that make me money?
So as a development house, it's really difficult to. It's a really difficult circle to square. How do you work with that? And they are looking. It is quite Wild West at the moment. I've just been at a conference, and that was the overriding feeling, was that everybody was jostling for a market share in a market that they don't actually know how to define at the moment. They're literally looking for ways of
and it's
creating
it. A bunch of people won't have any memory of the .com bubble, but for those of us that were around, it's like, well, it took 10 years plus for Amazon to make a profit. Yeah, had to run at a loss for well over a decade or something. And all of these things, all of that stuff of the internet's the future and everyone's going to make a fortune out of the internet and it's going to be this, that and the other, and you had the big bubble and then the burst. But it's that same thing of lots of promises. No money yet, though. We don't know how to make money out of this yet. We're not making any money out of it yet. This guy is. He's made a few bucks out of it. So we're at that kind of stage with it, I think.
It's a lot of investment. Huge amount of investment going in. There's a lot
of sunken costs as well.
There's a lot.
But a lot of money on the line that people are like, this can't be a loss.
Yeah, and I don't know where it's I don't know where it's going to end. But actually, I think people are. I think there's already an air of disenchantment in the industry.
I don't think the public are interested because your experience. It's basically being imposed on you. Here, have this thing that you don't want. That changes because tech does that all the time. Like every time Microsoft, for example, updates everything. It's like you've done something that I didn't ask for, didn't want, and now I don't know where anything is. How is this helpful to me? What level is that a good customer service? Like you do this. Like if you're going into an organisation and you're like telling people about change, and you like a lot of that's communication. You have to inform everybody internally, and then you have to inform like customers and your other users and passers-by. That this change process is ongoing, is happening. It goes to a point, and then you'll be something else. They don't do that. They just go, here's new, we've updated this, and it's that imposition, and that logic is just firmly stuck in that industry's mentality, well, Silicon Valley's mentality, like, we decide for you. Which is weird when there's all that flexibility and customization in it.
So there is an element of innovation for the sake of innovation. And there is a need to do that because the market is so fleeting that the only way you can if I spend 700 quid on an iPhone, then I want to get the maximum amount of value, whether that's usage or emotional usage or the response of the new. 700, and they're not 700 quid. I actually don't know how much they are. They're a lot. So it's a big investment. And you think about the types of people that are really focused on it. It's an exceptionally big investment. So the rational part of the human brain says this is a one-off until it breaks. It's a one-off until it stops working. There is no need to invest more in it. But Apple doesn't build itself on just selling once. It builds itself on selling multiple times over and over again. So what it's doing is it's reinventing the bits of the wheel that it can reinvent regularly. So they've just released a new version of the user interface, which is being roundly criticised because it's unusable. But they will always do that. They will always do that because they have to keep you interested in that. They have to make you think you are getting
you're getting something.
You're getting something in return for that money, and to keep you in that cycle, and then to eventually build you to a point where you can no longer you get used to that sort of cycle of dopamine, and then there comes a point in the cycle where you can't access it because your handset is out of date, or you can't access all of it. So that's the other neat trick. They sometimes give you partial access to things. You can't access all of it because your handset's out of date. And so you need to upgrade. So they build in this continuous purchase cycle through doing the ongoing innovation piece. So that is their business model. So Microsoft is slightly different just purely because they've got that, but they do have to try and keep pace with what is happening actually more broadly in technology, but actually in terms of data security, cyber security.
I think it's a harder challenge for them.
Yeah.
But also they have a better monopoly. Like there's not, who's other than going to Apple, who's going to change their operating system. Most people wouldn't. Most people have never heard of Linux. So, and then there are probably others as well. But, yeah, I think that's more difficult for them, isn't it? Because you're changing the world's operating system kind of thing, of like how most work happens and most commerce even, and all sorts of things. Well, even at the, the infrastructure level of like the power getting to the machines, to like how many of those are running on Windows, and like most of them. So again, there was a bunch of stuff that you kind of things that I could respond to there in that you brought up, and it's quite interesting. Let's go back to the people point. So
I never answered that question, did I actually? Yeah.
How do you deal with that? Do you try and be hands off with that, or have you got a bunch of, like, through experience, you got a bunch of like marketing, management training and skills where you're like, I'm really good with people and I've got all this HR knowledge? Is it that, or are you kind of, you just approach people as people, or you're like, I don't deal with that, someone else deals with that?
Yeah, I mean, so from a change management perspective, I don't deal with that. I put recommendations in place for, or I
So
make
it's up to the
recommendations.
business to organise that. And
and there are specialists in that.
Yeah.
And actually I have a partner working relationship with who are deeply specialist in exactly that, change management internally. It's not complicated. I remain delivery partner agnostic, so I have a number of people that I will work with as a preference. But I don't recommend them at the expense of anybody else, because for me it's really important to remain completely impartial. And I think that helps to add value and weight to what I do and why I do it, and especially when I'm doing it for not so much the SMEs, although there is an element of it, but especially when you're doing it for a cause-led organisation, I want to be entirely transparent about the relationship.
You want to be cause first as well, don't you? Because you're like, I'm not just here to help you as an organisation. I'm here to help you with your cause.
Yes.
So I'm supporting that, and that's what I'm here to support. So my intention is to deliver the best outcome there.
Yeah, it's really important for me that the decisions that I enable the organisation to make are in their best interests and not necessarily mine. But again, I need to make a living. I need to make an income. I want to grow a business. But I've taken the conscious decision to not do it off partnership arrangements, and especially ones that involve kickbacks or mutual invoicing arrangements or anything along those lines. So there's a big part of what I do which is around vendor selection and supplier selection, and that's entirely neutral. I have no vested interest in anybody that comes to the table in any of those discussions. It's always, we set the decision-making matrix to begin with, and then we work on that decision-making matrix. So people change management, I don't get involved in, but people management, and especially from a business analysis and strategy workshopping perspective, again, it's just qualified by experience. It's just something that I've picked up from having to learn really fast. It's interesting. I had this conversation with somebody not so long ago, and I've seen a bit about it. It's beginning to be a bit of a thing, because we're seeing this more and more with the lack of office time and especially in junior staff members. And I really support the desire to have a degree of flexibility and not be tied to a really strict 9 to 5 and have core hours. And I've done the 90 minutes commute either way, and it's horrible. I don't like it.
And you can get through a lot of books, though, if you're not driving.
Yeah, if you're not driving, you can do that. And I used to write, and actually that's something that I've really enjoyed doing more of since I became self-employed, is actually I now have time to write. And that was actually some of the purpose of it. You know, I get paid now to drink coffee and know things. You know, that's
what you want to do, isn't it, really?
That is what I want to do. Yeah. But there's this whole cohort of early starters. So reticent to say juniors, but that is what they are. You know, they're coming into the industry, and they are being thrown into complex relationships in commercial organisations, and they're expected to swim, and they have no real support networks other than the sort of like the regular manager catch-ups and, you know, the team's calls. And I fear for those relationships, and I fear for those people's ability to flourish. Not because I don't think they're not capable of it, but because I don't think they've got the required exposure to how other people are doing it. And I don't mean how they're doing it on a Zoom call, but how they're doing it in real life.
You're missing the other bits. It's not just the water cooler moments, is it? It's the someone sitting next to you saying, "Don't do that. That'll always go wrong for you. If you do this, your life will be much easier." Just that, which is a huge piece of training and like quick knowledge for you that could make your entire day, week, year so much better. You know, that kind of quick, just do it this way. And you like, that's hard to do on a digital, you know, remote kind of thing of just like, because you'd either have to type it all out or you'd have to spend 10 minutes explaining it over a camera or like refer articles or whatever. That's like loads of back and forth. Whereas in an office with a person there, it's a sentence and a point. And
I think there's...
But we don't like. I don't really see anyone talk about that unintentional sort of casual training.
So one of the things I did the ILM, Institute of Leadership Management.
Oh, yeah.
I did the first half of it, and I couldn't complete it because of work commitments. So I just didn't have the capacity to finish it off. Which is actually, you know, I'm a bit disappointed in. I'd love to revisit that at some point down the line, but. One of the things I've not really thought about this idea of I had them in my head and the words have gone again. Synchronous and asynchronous communication. So synchronous is immediate and on the spot and
at the same
time. And asynchronous is I've written a document. He'll find it here, go away and peruse it at your leisure. So an email is asynchronous. And they're both valuable. And there are, you know, really good reasons for their value. And understanding how they work with one another is actually really important. And it's something I've not considered before. I've not considered the difference in value of the two and why that might be the case. So that was a great piece of learning to come out of IOM. But actually, I think that there is a third element that sits in between those two now that we haven't yet properly defined, which is the difference between real life synchronous and virtual synchronous. Because there is so much that you gather in terms of social data in real life. Every single minute of your exposure to a person that you don't get online.
Yeah. We wouldn't have had the same conversation online. It would be a different conversation. It just would be. And
because there are environmental factors. There are environmental factors. There isn't a lag.
Yeah.
No matter how small, there is always a lag on a digital engagement. Screen rate flicker is
frame rate as well.
You know, it's an absolute killer. Seeing nothing of somebody from the sort of the chest downwards.
Yeah.
What are their hands doing? What
and you've got no sense of scale either. Like when you meet people and you're like, oh my God, you're massive. Oh, you're really short. And just, you assume everyone's this set height because their setup is for their height, you know.
Yeah.
So everyone's got the same
Everyone
picture.
looks the same, yeah. People are not fully there online because there is. I'm as guilty of this as the next person, but there is always the opportunity when you're looking at a screen with a camera for you to be looking at other things simultaneously.
Yeah.
You're not engaged.
I can look at the main road from I can be on the monitor and I can look at the main road. You know, if there's a police car going by, if I'm doing an interview or whatever, I'll look away.
Yeah. So I think that there is. I think that there's a whole cohort of people coming through, and this is in all industries, but in a customer-centric, commercial, analytical environment like the one that I came through. There is a whole cohort of people who are coming through who have not developed those customer-centric, analytical, commercial skills adequately. They've got the foundations, and they've got the degree, and they've read the things, and they don't have all of the breadth that supports that and makes it good. And I think that I think that's going to be a challenge moving forward. So I think that is a challenge across multiple industries. It's a challenge across multiple age groups. But I think that we're only just going to begin to see the real impact of it as this newer cohort comes through the ranks. And I dread to think what leadership under some of these people is going to be like, actually, because their experience of being led is different to mine. And
because they're not being taught anything valuable. Like they're not learning practical. It's all sort of make what you want of it, and it's and a lot of I was saying this about sort of the training online. If you're self-teaching, there's a very big difference between how you have taught to think in an institute of education, in academia. If they're doing it well, they're teaching you to think and to think about what you're being told and to examine it and assess its relevance for you, assess its veracity and so on. Whereas a lot of these courses are kind of like, do this, do this, do this, do this. And you get that with loads of business training online as well. It's very much like an instruction list of do this, do this, do this, do this, do this. There's no why, which is why you've got so many businesses and startups. They're all doing the same thing. And then they do it for however long before they're kind of like, I stopped doing that because I realized it was completely pointless for my business. Didn't need to do it. Was a waste of my time and energy, and I'm spending ages on it, and I should be doing this instead, which I now do, and it's better. So there's so much in there, but I think one of the key things is that thing of David Bowie talking about, we don't even know the way that the internet will change us yet. And this is, he's been dead a few years now, and he said that before that, and it's been a long time, seemingly a long time within a human lifetime, but it's nothing. It's nothing. And 20 years from now, in my mind, it's just more of a hellscape of just noise online and more everything's awful kind of stuff. But everything could be completely different. And it could be because of this, because it's changing us in ways we can't know or see, because it's making us act in ways that we haven't recognized or realized yet, maybe, or it's forcing us into situations and arrangements that haven't formed. These kind of things. But I can totally see, I think that's a big part of it. Of all of that's gone. Like all of the old way and the old systems and the pathway, like it's like the path that you walked here on, you turn around and it's gone. It's just covered in snow or whatever. It's been blown away, and you're kind of like, well, I thought I was
hottest day of the year so far, and you choose snow as your analogy. I mean, I just think we haven't learned how to define what hybrid actually means yet, and we don't understand what the impact of not doing that is yet. And my gut feeling is that there are going to be two things. One is that the pace of homogenisation is going to increase exponentially. It is increasing exponentially. Just, everything is the same. But also that there will be little glimmers of light, these little counterculture
openings and
punk
opportunities,
movements, where the bright sparks do flourish and do something different. And actually, this is why I'm interested in. I'm not exclusively third sector, but SMEs as well. Let's give them access to the tools to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Let's feed those fires and see what happens. Be the light you want to see in the world.
Yeah.
That's it. So let's not try to homogenize and make everything the same and grow through assimilation and
I don't think you can either.
Uniformity.
I don't think you can. I think the universe will resist you. The earth will resist you. An environment will resist you. If everywhere could be the same, it would be. And you do get that. I was talking yesterday of like, you travel around the world and you realise that geographies are kind of, or however you want to describe it, but they're like, New Zealand's very much the same as Chile or Canada, Alaska, or, huge bits of Russia or whatever, or bits of Scotland and Northern Europe and places where you have limestone formations and stuff. It's like, I've seen all this before. And you see it there and you see it there. And then the tropics are kind of very similar, so there is, you can have a kind of a homogeneity in places, but they're bound. They have natural limits of like, you cannot be that singular thing in this space, but the space will resist you or will not allow you. So I think there's a natural limit to that. And I think a lot of the online chaos, as much as it's about, engaging people through outrage, it is, you simultaneously see, like I see it with young people who, they don't know that there is no distinction between the US and Britain for them in a lot of things. And like, we have a completely different legal system and history and culture, and what they're doing is not the same as what we're doing. Like, there are big, strong similarities and we're on the same vein in a lot of ways, but there are distinctions and particularities. So to map on, American cultural perspectives onto what you're doing here is wrong and not thought through, and from lack of experience as well. But I think those things, I think a lot of it is, like you say, the homogeneity of, because the media always talks with that single voice narrative of, this is the only voice, I am the authority, even though there's millions of them all doing that at the same time. But it is very singular of like, it's that thing again of like, we will tell you what to do and what to think. We have made the decision for you. And I think, and we don't like that as people, we don't like those decisions to be made for us. And that brings me back to the thing. So I'll just say this and then I'll move on to another.
That's all right.
So, when you were talking about making that decision to kind of go your own way, and a lot of people that I've spoke to, especially with startups and stuff, that's kind of I think that's a very fundamental and key kind of struggle for an individual to have. That moment where you go, I'm doing this for other people and not for me. What do I want to do? Like, you take control of your life and go, what are the things that I want to do with my life?
Two aspects to it. And I've sat in a number of business accelerator programs and lots of networking events. And, I've got a peer support group of startups in a similar position to me. So two aspects. Why am I doing this for someone else when I could do this for me? More importantly, there has to be a better way of doing it. Because what we're doing now is what everybody else does, and it feels broken.
Yeah.
It feels geared towards the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to this mission for my business, which is to make available and accessible things, thinking, approaches, technology that wouldn't be accessible to actually the people that will benefit from it the most. What we do will benefit BT by a fraction of a percentage. What we do will benefit, I'm not going to name any because I don't want to put anybody under pressure, but a small charity, a small charity with an income of say $2 million a year will benefit them by multiple points of a percent. The difference is exponentially bigger the smaller the business gets. There comes a point where it's not financially viable for even me to approach it. I need to be realistic about that. But I think that the really small businesses will get carried along on the wave of that thinking by, other people having exposure to it. And so, we let's narrow the gap. There has to be a better way of doing this. I get we all want to make money. We all want to be successful. But my success definition has shifted so radically. And I can say that because I'm in my 50s, and I've done all of the things I've set out to actually do for me. I've bought the house. I've had the car. I've had the cars. I've been on the holidays, and there are always more places to see and things to drive and motorbikes to ride.
You'll never see everywhere in the world. You just won't.
But that itch has been scratched.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
In many ways, and actually
done that now. Now what?
That was literally it.
Yeah.
What's next?
I've done that. I've done all of that, and I keep waking up. What am I supposed to do now?
Yeah. And I do think that that's a benefit of my age. I have that self-awareness,
experience as well to draw from.
I think back to when I was in my early 20s, and I'd have gladly done what I'm doing now in my early 20s. That it's just that there's this 30-year bit in the middle, where I was slowly pulled into a system, not slowly, rapidly pulled into a system, and then tried to make the most of that. And now I've come out the other side of it, and I'm quite grateful for having done it in a way that has enabled me to live a very good life. I'll never be in the top 1% of the UK, but it has been for the most part, generally pretty comfortable, and I've enjoyed it, and I've reaped the rewards of that effort. But now I want to give something still want to be successful, but that's, like I say, that success metric is different, and it's based as much on impact as it is upon and personal satisfaction as it is upon business growth.
Yeah, but it's about having a role.
Yeah,
it's like having a function, doing something. It's your social standing. Like, where do I sit in the group? What is my function? What do I do? And we need that. Like, whatever situation we're in, that's a fundamental human need. We're social animals. We need to feel that we're part of something and we're contributing, and that people contribute to us, and so on. And yeah, that's the challenge in a system that isolates people more and more. And there's a thing about that conversation of you being trained and you being brought into a system and being brought into a tradition, even of like ways of working and how things are done, and like the formal process of how business is done and so on. And there's a big pushing out element to modern society now, it seems, where it's like you're out, which is, you can summarize in cancellation or something of like, you're out now, you're not in, you're not in, you're not in, and like, you don't have these skills. You can come back in, you can go and be trained, but you must comply to rejoin. And it's, there's something of a distinction there to me. Like, it does seem like it's sort of, not my problem now. Not my problem, and not my job to train you and include you and bring you part of the tradition. You should know. You should already know. But actually, you should go and do your homework and then you can join.
But the other side of it is that the people who... I went into the workplace, I couldn't learn enough fast enough. Everybody would ask questions all the time. I found myself apologising for it. And to be honest, I still do it now. I go into a new environment, and it's now my job to ask questions. But there's an element of you're going to get bored of this quite quickly, and so tell me when we need to back down a tiny bit. But I was talking with a good friend of mine a couple of days ago, and he works in a busy creative studio. He's in a senior leadership position. He struggles to talk to a third of the entire business, not because they are difficult to talk to, but because they all exist entirely, and they're in the office 3 days a week, but they all have headphones on constantly.
Is this all the admin staff, clerical staff?
No,
right.
This is everybody. This is creatives, client relations.
Everyone's shut off from everybody else.
And they've all got noise cancelling on, and they are deliberately isolating themselves from one another.
Yeah.
So and I've been to where he works, and it's great as a creative environment, but it could be better. And I compare it to places that I used to work, and I know this isn't entirely fair, but I compare it to places where I used to work, where we didn't have everybody. Well, they didn't have noise cancelling technology for a start, but we didn't have you just didn't. Everybody sat around and
open plan, always open plan,
and engaged with one another. And now there's this weird silence over a lot of the studio,
and it's seen as the way to work. As the people that produce and constantly produce are the ones that have shut themselves off and shut themselves away. So it's like that's encouraged of like get into the zone, get into the flow.
And I get that. I've campaigned in previous roles.
Literally, you're a company, a company of actors. That's what it means. Company, like more than like three's a crowd. There's at least a few people there.
So I've campaigned for this in a couple of places where I've worked previously, and certainly pre-COVID, I introduced a working policy at a business I was working at of deep work. So there were periods where you would have deep work, and actually there's a really good book on it, literally called Deep Work, but this idea of there are periods in the day where I need to turn off my email, turn off my notifications, do this, do that. Then this is my structure around it, and then the rest of the time I am freely available and will engage. And there's
distractible.
And there's a real lack of. So there's the word. There's a real lack of engagement, and so that's what worries me for the future for these people, is that they will come into. They'll come into a position of seniority, or they will want to do something which means that they are having to lead, and they do not necessarily have the skills and the background and the life experience to be able to do so through no fault of their own. Just their environment and their societal expectations put them in a position where they don't have the privilege of what I experienced. My first major design studio was 80 people in a room talking all day, every day, and it was, your head would be ringing at the end of it, and it was incredible. Loved it. What an environment, and we got great things done. This was a global agency producing global campaigns for global names. The buzz in that place was tangible. There was no silence. The only time you got silence was when we properly dropped the ball on something. Yeah. And then it was, you need to get this done. Yeah. You're facing it, and that's where deep work comes in. Here's the thing, sort this out. And this is the deadline, and it's urgent. And everybody knew and everybody responded, but the bits in between were, exciting. Exciting. There you go. There's a word I don't hear often enough about work. Yeah. And it was exciting. It was exciting to be involved in that industry. It was exciting to be involved in marketing. It was exciting to be involved in digital. And I see less of that excitement now, and I see it less, especially in the bigger organisations.
That's a really good, interesting point. What was I going to say to you on that? Oh yeah, the deep working thing. There's that, because the other side of that is that I talk about this a lot, of the sort of the mentality that people can be used like people are a machine that can be set at a constant rate, and that they're the person that comes in with the noise-cancelling headphones on all day, and they're there at 8 o'clock and they leave at 8 o'clock or whatever, and they're there every day, and they're just like solidly barreling down. They go home and they have no life, because all of their energy's gone into that, because they're trying to do this constant rate, and then
it's this very sort of like industrial approach to time and motion.
Yeah, because it's go, stop, go, stop, or it's like fast, slow. There's a bit like a wavelength on these. There's the top of the peak, there's the bottom of the peak. You have to do the full journey from day to night, work to rest, and that's not it doesn't seem to be in our schema of like, go. And I think some of it's like, I'm thinking about holidays very much like this, because I'm like, why don't we work in a more season? Like, why don't we work less in winter when it's dark and it's cold and no one wants to be outside? Or work more, but there should be a variation. Why do we do the same hours all year long? Like, everyone's going to work at the same. There's no greater thinking about it, it seems, and it's just sort of like, work as hard as you can for as long as you can. But if you ran a machine like that, you would just destroy the machine. Like, run it at red as fast as you can, as hard as you can, for as long as you can. It's dead now. We need a new one. We can't even repair it. We've just broken everything.
So that is quite interesting, isn't it? Because I think that approach to constancy lends itself to repetitive, mechanical, unchanging,
inflexible, because you're just mowing that groove, aren't you? And it's like you're not developing new skills.
So So a long time ago, in fact, so you referenced the dot-com bubble bursting. I was in London. I was working in London when that happened. Spent a short period of time just trying to stay there, cling on to work, but everything dried up. So it was absolute carnage in the city. I came back up north. I took the first real job that I could find, which was working in the design studio for a manufacturing facility. And they manufactured beds, really good quality beds. They had a marketing team. We were the design function there. You walked onto the manufacturing floor, and the bit that I was next to, and the people I talked to most were the ladies in the fabric cutting, mostly ladies, not entirely, but mostly ladies in the fabric room. So they did all of the upholstery and the sewing, but they're dealing with the bolts as well. And there's a chap who used to bring a bolt of material down and they'd cut to order. There was one woman whose job was to essentially, once the bolt of material had been loaded onto the cutting machine, was to watch the bolt go through the blade and make sure it didn't deviate by more than a centimetre from the line that was marked on the bolt of fabric. So all she did all day was watch this bolt of fabric get rolled out and rolled through a machine and cut into two pieces, diverging. She just watched that blade and made sure that the line never deviated from that. 8 hours a day, every day. Minimum wage, dreadful, dreadful job. And all she, so that 100% lends itself to start at 9, finish at 5. Work at a constant rate. I get that. And bless her, she was lovely, and she had pictures of all her family and all of the kids above the blade. And she said, "That's what I do. I look at them because I know when the line's moving. I can do something with it, but I think about them. That's what I think about. I don't think about the job. That just happens. So that routine, that way of working, that constant rate.
Well, jobs that you can check out of as well.
Jobs that you can do check out of.
Yeah.
So, like I say, mechanical, repetitive, require very little deviation.
A lot of data entry can be like that unless you have to really be on what's happening. If it's just largely copy and pasting, you can check out.
Yeah. So, but actually, interestingly, if you were to try and push that faster, then it would begin to fall apart. So there is a push to get, and I said this right at the beginning. There's a push to get more out of less.
We should be finding it's finding that it's all about the Goldilocks zone for me across everything. It's finding the sweet spot, isn't it? It's or even if you're thinking about a car, the efficiency of a car, like a car's. I don't know if this still applies with modern cars, but the old thinking was you need to get it up to about 40, 50 miles an hour to get the maximum efficiency from it. So that's where it's most efficient, most fuel efficiency, best speed, and the engine's running at its most optimized sort of range.
So that there's a world championships for fuel economy?
No, but it doesn't surprise me.
So there is there is an organisation, and it's properly done. There are championships that are run where there are different classes of car that you can enter, and everybody gets given the same amount of fuel, and it's properly measured. And then you have to drive as far as possible around a set route for as long as possible on the same amount of fuel. And they're mostly men. We're going to be honest.
Wouldn't it have to be the same car and the same driver?
No, so there are different classifications. Right, okay. So you can have different sizes of car, but there are people who have a preference for very small, nimble little things, and but there's this real challenge to get the most out of the least. How do how do you use the gears? How, what advantage do you take of downhills? Is there a benefit switching the engine off or not? Do you rely on an automatic transmission or not? I think most of the perceived wisdom is don't. It's just, little things like that. And it's this idea, and this is something that I do work with a lot, this idea of marginal gains. You don't need to make a big impact in one area in order to accumulate a large gain overall. You need to make small changes in multiple areas, and that accumulation by default becomes much bigger, greater than the sum of its parts, essentially. So Dave Brailsford, did it with the British cycling team. I'll talk about him all day long. Amazing work with the British cycling team. And they took a failing team through to dominating a sport in 5 years or something, I think. And he did it through fractional change and fractional improvement for every point of detail, rather than just saying go faster. It's, pedal slightly differently, modify your position on the bars, change your approach to corners, improve your cardiovascular strength in this area. All just look at the marginal gains because they will stack up.
So I'm going to go take us back to questions.
Okay.
So I'm going to do COVID first.
Yep.
Obviously, you weren't working in quite the same way you are now. Were you doing a similar sort of thing
yes.
at the time? Right. So what I want to look at here is the experience going into COVID, into lockdown, how or if your work did change at that point, and then coming out of it, what are the sort of, are there any long-term changes? Are there any, did it change your work?
Yeah, so going into COVID, the shift to purely online in terms of dealing with people was probably easier for us than it would have been for a lot of other businesses.
Were you already working at home on and off? Or?
We weren't, but I think as an industry, it lends itself to hybrid working. So, it from a general operational perspective, it was fine. It made client services slightly harder because we were entirely reliant on phone calls. We couldn't do, I'm a big believer in face-to-face. I think that just the industry, it should be based on face-to-face engagements. That's, having managed client services teams for years, I challenge anybody to tell me otherwise. What we did see as an industry was a rush to digitalize, so to take offline processes online. What we have seen as a consequence is the fallout from doing that badly. And I say, I don't mean badly in a critical way. People did it often out of necessity and quickly, and without any real strategic thought. And we were involved in a number of those as well, worked with a number of businesses who were almost exclusively offline and needed to do anything to be able to maintain some degree of trade. And we helped them do it. And, it was very definitely sticking plaster, but there are businesses now who are still working with those sticking plaster systems. I think the long-term net effect, and this does come back to that conversation about the studio where everybody's isolated. There's a big group of people all in one place, none of whom are connected to one another, is that there's an expectation that they can do that. Not that they should do that, but that they can do that. So there's a weight afforded to organisations that offer hybrid. But again, I think that hybrid working is not clearly understood, defined, and the impact of it isn't really understood particularly well. And there's a lot of pressure on businesses to not rock the boat on that. And I've got, I have some sympathy for businesses that are insisting on increasing their office days because, again, I think that there's a need to do it.
And there's ways of doing it as well.
But there are ways
of
doing it.
When you say, right, well, you're coming into the office, but you don't all have to you don't all have to do rush hour.
Yeah.
You can come in at a different time. We'll reduce the hours or whatever. Because we want so many hours in the office, therefore we'll offer this flexibility. Do you know what I mean? What's the incentive of where is it? It's the selling the benefits thing. It's like, what is the benefit to me of me going through the morning commute? How is me having that stress? How does that help me?
Yeah, I think. So you're taking that from a very
I'm taking it from a climate perspective because you're making all of these people travel at the same time, use carbon at the same time, which means you're using an excess of carbon that you don't need to use.
Okay. So my question about office time is, what is the purpose of office time? Mm-hmm. And I think this is the thing that we've struggled with hybrid working, is that we
haven't got an answer for that because it's not work. I can work at home.
Yeah, our office time is and I object to this as much as the next man. My office time is the same as my at home time. I do the same things. I can actually do a lot of those things better at home. Yeah. The things that I do better at an office are the things I don't necessarily get the opportunity to do in the office. So if I was sitting at the head of a large organisation, I would be, and I do know businesses that do this actually, I would be saying office time is for these specific activities. Focus on these specific activities. Yeah. They're the ones that bring you benefit and us benefit. Yeah. And in that respect, I think that would be a way of justifying the carbon utilisation. Because otherwise it is just there as a means of checking in. It is there as a means of, overseeing
it's a
people.
Means of getting people to go to Pret and use the bus service and buy newspapers and stuff. Which are all perfect, they're all functions of what happens in the city and so on. Yeah. And it's all straightforward. But it's like, do we need to do that? When there is a cost like that associated. So what was the work level like? Did you have a bunch of clients drop off, or was it?
Oh yeah,
So did it dip and then go straight up? Or?
Yeah, so it dipped, and it dipped past a point that was sustainable, and the business folded. So
right. Was that quite quick, or was it
6
slow
weeks.
And drawn up? Wow. So basically, everyone bailed.
Just everything. Yeah.
Wow.
6 weeks. Maybe a bit longer.
So where were you sort of mentally at that point? Were you just like, what now what? Yeah. What do I do? How do you start a business in this? Or how do you get a job in this? Yeah. Did you do a bunch of remote interviews or anything?
Yeah. I found employment quite quickly. So what's the effect of COVID long term? The effect of COVID long term is that lots and lots of businesses in digital scaled up very rapidly in order to cope with the modification in demand, and came out the other side of it and weren't able to maintain that. And that has seen a huge drop off. And we've seen some really big phases of redundancy.
Which is part of the redundancies, which the media would have us believe is all like AI and
So it's. I think it's more to do with the scaling up to cope with demand.
Yeah, because that's a huge piece of work that suddenly needs to do. That's massive demand, and then it doesn't need to be done anymore.
So I think that's been, if I was going to talk about the biggest single long-term impact, it would be that reintroduction of people back into the unemployment space. Unnecessarily. Is it unnecessary?
But yeah, but
Maybe.
then there's the flip side of the. I mean, it's that age-old thing of, well, now they're free to work in the market and get a better job and earn more and this, that, and the other. So there is a truth to that, but also, now they haven't got a livelihood. They haven't got a secure job, and they haven't got.
So I think it has thrown the industry into a bit of disarray the last 18 months. 2 years, and the financial market has exacerbated that. I think it's coming anyway. I think we've seen big agencies just shed bodies, and it's not just big agencies across the board. The recruitment market is tough at the minute. There are some horror stories out there, so I think it's going to get worse before it gets better, sadly. And I think it will. But I think the flip of it is that we will see far more fractional support as well. So more people operating as independents and solos and going in as contract. And I've seen that beginning to take shape. And I think there's more of an acceptance of that because people don't want to commit to the big long-term budget of managing a significant salary.
Yeah, I mean that's the whole thing as well as again skills issues of the short-term contract. Like I was going to mention to you with like the charity sector, you must have seen this a lot where someone's given, they get funding for something, the funding pays for a person, and that person then has to deliver all of these things that they didn't set out, that have been given to them. They didn't arrange the budget for, and then the budget's kind of like, you manage that now. And it's that thing of like, so I have to fix the entire problem on my own with this random brief that was thrown together and a pot of money that was like, yeah, you can have that, and then do something with it. And, depending on how experienced you are in that kind of role, the person will be like, right, well, event here and publication there and this, that, and the other, and make contact with people. But it's about getting something done, having an effect isn't just awareness raising. It's like ground level nothing, isn't it? It's like there's this problem that we should be aware of. Doing something about is the actual work, the activity. Like that's the hard bit, and that must be frustrating going in with like they're trying to deliver these things, especially when you've got 3 of these people, 4 or 5 of them in an organisation, and they, like you said, they can't work together. They might even be in the same office, but because their money's allocated from different pots, their cross-working is limited. It's frustrating.
I think they've gotten better at it.
Yeah,
and what you tend to find is that so what my experience of it, and this is just me speaking, is that the funding, certainly in the charitable sector, comes in for a program, and that program is defined to be distributed across multiple business units or touch points, and there'll be because they're people first, and because everybody there is essentially pulling in the same direction, far more so than you see in a commercial organisation. They tend to be better at saying, okay, so we need a working group to deal with this. It's slower, considerably slower, where they struggle is experience. But there's a growing realisation in the third sector overall that they bring in subject matter experts for everything else.
Yeah.
They're used to doing that. We need a specialist in this subject. So why do we not consider doing that with our digital ecosystem? And that's beginning to gain a lot more traction at the moment. So that's that plays well for me. It's nice.
Yeah. Do you want to say anything more about COVID before I move on?
No.
Okay, just checking.
I can't wait to see what the next wave looks like. It's going to be. I think that's going to be because something's going to happen, isn't it? That's the reality of it. I think they'll. Yeah.
You don't want to speak too soon.
I don't want to speak too soon. And don't get me wrong, I'd rather it didn't, because it was horrible. And really, and preventable as well, frustratingly. Yeah. And certainly the scale of the impact was preventable.
Instructive as well, of like watching a real life emergency play out in this modern world.
And I think that if I was going to be critical at all of the industry or the sort of the environment I work in, is that the internet, broadly speaking, has enabled the worst voices possible to be heard in a way that they wouldn't have been in any other time in history, and it plays to the lowest common denominator, because that's how the algorithms work. They're an echo chamber, and I think that the next one, when it hits, could be awful. I mean, it might not be, and I hope it's not. But I think if it's anything. If it's anything like the Spanish flu, then and even now, I think there was there have been some new cases of various strains of bird flu that are cropping up, and you're seeing the beginnings of reports in the local news, and all of the comments sections are full of naysayers and anti-vaxxers, and I worry about that, to be honest.
But they also need to, I mean, in terms of national communications and so on, of like how that's done and how that's managed. There's a lot of lessons to be learned from it, let's put it that way. I'm going to move us on to Brexit, another happy, friendly subject. This really varies. So, has it changed anything for you work-wise?
No, not at all, because everything that I do is it's not trade in the same way. The only thing that's changed is that I have to queue longer when I go, abroad on a business trip. So, it's not. The only thing that it's done is obviously, there's the big negative economic impact overall on the country, and that has obviously made trading for everybody difficult. So that is the only impact of Brexit for me, from a working perspective. Otherwise, some modifications to e-commerce sites and how they function. The bigger change came with GDPR. And the rush to get everybody compliant with GDPR, and then weirdly the European Accessibility.
I've not heard about this one. I've not been in the workplace for a while.
Yeah, so the European Accessibility Act was signed in 2000 and I'm going to really show myself up here, 19. And was due to be entirely in place and enacted by the end of this month. And I think it's been quietly forgotten about by most people in digital, and I think it's a time bomb waiting to happen.
Something for disabled people, quietly forgotten about, never.
Yeah, and I think that. So if I was an organisation that placed commercial success or used commercial success or my public face to determine some of that, I would be looking at whether I met the obligations that were set out under the European Accessibility Act really seriously right now, because my experience of highly motivated, highly well organised campaign groups in the disability sector is that they are very good at mobilising action. And they're better at it than the general populace, who generally doesn't care where their data goes. They honestly don't care.
Yeah, I know.
And so GDPR has been actually a really toothless piece of legislation. I think that we are about to see a raft of very high-profile cases being brought against companies.
They need to. All these breaches and like all of the obligations from that. These companies should have been paying fines left, right, and centre. What the hell's going on? Like, we just whatever. We don't care. We don't. There are no laws. We just, only when it's convenient for us. Hey, either it applies or it doesn't apply. Pick.
So I think we're going to see. I think we'll see some momentum behind that.
Yeah,
it's interesting. There's a couple of agencies I have a lot of respect for who have been talking about it recently, and they're getting very little sort of engagement or response from people who should be sitting up and taking notice. I'm interested to see how that pans out.
I mean, there's I'm going to say it. Feel free to respond if you want to. Feel free to leave it as it is. But I do get this sense of, and especially since COVID, there's people just feel safe of like, well, who's going to check? I feel there's like a rampant lawlessness, and that combines with this sort of attitude that seems to have developed of like, I don't care about the customer, there'll be another one. Like, like zero customer service. You're more valuable to us gone. We've got your data. We don't need you. Like, I don't want to spend a fortune trying to make you happy. So I think there's this sort of, it does feel a bit Wild West at the moment. And I think that plays into confidence as well, and like people sort of spending online or in person, or spending for things that, even buying holidays or going to events, it's like, well, that might be cancelled, or people haven't got as much confidence in stuff. Like, I don't know, because like I say, I've not been working, so I feel kind of isolated from stuff now. So I'm kind of like, it could just all be whatever I'm making up in my head. But, I get that impression.
It's not top of people's priorities.
But everyone's just hoping that that they can keep making the money that they're making and pay the bills they've got.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's not top of people's priorities, but they're desperate to improve their business viability. And if you're missing 20% of the entire population because you don't have an accessible digital experience, then it feels to me as though doing something relatively simple to improve your digital accessibility, not just from a legislative perspective, but from a commercial perspective, it makes absolute sense. And so I don't entirely understand that, but I actually think a lot of it is driven by the fact that people just aren't that aware of it as an imperative and how much of an impact it can actually have. So there is an element of I don't care, and there is an element of we don't know, and those two combined are making it worse.
I'm going to do climate change first, and then social media. I recognise that both of these could be quite big questions for you, or one could be bigger than the other. But so from a climate change perspective, does it affect your work? I'll just ask it that way. It's simply like, is it a consideration for you? Is it something that you've is it built into the design of your new business? Like, how does it affect it? Does it affect it?
Yeah, I mean, it ostensibly doesn't, but is becoming more of a topic of conversation with people. And I had a new business call with an organisation where the fact that I talk at all about sustainability was one of the reasons they wanted to talk to me. You know, I don't proactively go out and build sustainable solutions, but I do talk about the need to think about it. And so I think that is becoming more of a thing. I've had conversations with clients about changing the way their infrastructure is specified and utilised in order to reduce their carbon emissions. And some of it's cost driven, but some of it is also, you know, from a perspective of we actually want to be trying to make a difference here as well.
Some of it's just long-term thinking rather than short-term thinking.
Yeah, like, completely.
Well, do you want to pay this over and over and over again, or do you want to pay this amount one time for this many years?
Yeah, so it's becoming more of a topic of conversation. Again, just come back from London Tech Week. There's a whole work stream of conversations around sustainability and environmental impact. And the bulk of those conversations are at a very large infrastructure scale. And I've sat through some of the discussions and the panels, and they are very much about that, you know, how do we create a national grid that works for everybody, which I think is valuable. But I was reflecting on it the other day. Something that struck me in one of the conversations I was having with the Federation of Small Businesses is that 99% of all organisations in the UK are classified as an SME. They account for 75% of the workforce and 50% of the income generated in the UK. Whilst they utilise infrastructure, 99% of business has no imperative to look at its ecological credentials.
What it's got, its roads, and and the ecological side as well. Yeah.
So that we're focusing very much on the macro solution, but we're not considering what contribution the micro elements could be making to that, and putting things in place which enable them to make a contribution, which would ultimately account for, 99% of the entire working populace of Great Britain. So,
and it goes back to those incremental improvements.
Incremental improvements. How do we take marginal gains across a large sector and ask everybody to make a small change which incrementally results in a big change, instead of focusing on what we are focusing on, which are these huge infrastructure projects. I think, there's an economic benefit to doing that, because it creates jobs, it plows money back into UK PLC and all of those things, 100%. But at the very least, tackle it from both ends. I think that's missing.
Yeah,
a real lack of information and opportunity and accessibility to, other ways of doing things and people just don't. They don't see it as an imperative for them.
Yeah, I'm not going to respond to that, because it'll open up too many things. So I'm going to move us on to the next question. I agree with you.
Yeah.
I do agree with you. I'm running very late.
That's all right. Yeah, it's fine.
So, we've done social media.
Yeah.
I
exist in it.
Yeah. Do you try to avoid it, or you just do what you need to do, or?
I like it. I like it in that.
I mean, my question is is it a good return on investment for your time,
yes.
basically?
Yeah, for me it is. Yeah. From a commercial perspective, it is. Outside of work, no. I try to avoid it because I love it and despise it in equal measure.
Have you got quite good curated sort of channels and feeds?
Very definitely.
But you still get something sneaking in every now and again to try and get you riled up.
Yeah. So, but on a professional level, I wouldn't be able to exist without LinkedIn. It is. I actually don't like the term social media because all media is social by definition, and therefore, LinkedIn is just a channel. It's not and Instagram is a channel. It's not it's all media is social. Newspapers are social. They're just different in the way that they deliver.
Well, when I was having this kind of conversation early on, because it was something that we always talked about before it was a question, and I was like, I think we should start calling it work media rather than social media, because most of it that we're doing is for our work rather than... I mean, I suppose it's pervasive, isn't it? It's through all of it, but it feels like you spend a lot of time on it for your job, I think, no matter what your job is. So what I'm going to do here... No, I'll stick to the way it is. I was going to swap the UBI question round and the change question.
Yeah.
But I'll stick to how it is. So, if you could change any three things about your work, bearing in mind that you can change a lot of things, so handle this question how you want. You can be very fantastical and
I'll see what I can do.
Change the world if you want.
Yeah.
But if you could change any three things about your work, what would you change? What would you like to change?
What would I like to change?
Is it a matter of doing more faster, reaching more people, delivering the mission?
I'd like to make it easy for people to access the service. I'd like to make it less emotionally consuming for me, because it can, it's mentally...
So you've got to explain everything that you're doing, haven't you? You can't just go, here's the package, this fixed stuff, buy it.
Yeah, so I take a huge amount of information in, and I do some mental gymnastics with it, and then I do something, and then something comes out of the other end of it, and it takes a huge amount out of my head, and it's really impactful on my sort of it is. It's really. Our friend is a heating engineer. I was going to say he installs boilers for a living, and that sounds diminutive. He's very good at what he does. He makes a good living, self-employed, and I've got a lot of time for him. And I was trying to explain this to him. He said, "I never thought about that. I was, you sit at a desk and you just think, and how is that tiring? You need
it's very tiring,
exhausting,
and it doesn't tire your body out.
No,
is the problem.
It's absolutely exhausting, and so I'd like that to be a bit more straightforward. And I think because what I've got has been, and the approach that I take has been ratified and documented, and is to some extent process driven. There is still an element of heavy lifting, that heavy lifting is confined to short, sharp bursts rather than being the entirety of an engagement. So when somebody employs me to do a consultancy piece, there are processes in place that make it easier for me to be able to organise that information in my head.
Yeah,
and that means that gymnastics piece is then easier for me to deal with at the end of it. So there's a conveyor belt to some extent, but also I recognise that not all businesses are the same. And that conveyor belt has an almost infinite array of deviations that it can take. I'm trying to think of the third one that I would change. And that's it. So I can't because I have been fortunate enough to be able to define my own working situation. I have said this is what I want it to look like.
Is there a dream piece of kit or anything that would be the next level of the business of if I had one of those, that'd be great. I could do.
Nothing that I can talk about.
Okay.
So in order to make this accessible to more people, I need to be able to create systems and to reduce the cost of delivery.
Yeah.
So, from a business growth perspective, I think there are opportunities to increase reach of the thinking and increase reach of the methodology, but it's at the ideas stage yet, and there are things that I can't talk about because there's things I can't talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's fair enough.
For commercially sensitive, commercially sensitive. But I think actually we'll have an impact on other businesses, and I'll never be rich off the back of them. But I think that they will serve the purpose of making it. So we talked. I said very early doors. There's a whole group of organisations that fall even outside my acceptance criteria. They just can't afford it. There are ways of getting them access to some of that, and very cheaply and affordably, and it will be at a low level, but it's in the pipeline, and it's something that's yet to come.
Yeah. Well, I mean that's development, evolution, broadening the service, all of that's sort of natural. And you said you won't be rich. You'll be rich in here.
I will. Yeah, and that's what matters. That is what matters. I'm going to ask if I can just stop for a second.
Yeah,
because
sure.
I think I am due to be meeting someone here, and I can't remember what time she said she was coming. And I think... Apologies.
No, it's fine.
It's all right.
We've run out of time anyway.
So I think
they're
she's
not kicking us out just yet.
No, so she's due to be here. 1-ish. There you go. Fine. We're good.
Right, let's do this last question then. And the AC switched off for us especially. So universal basic income. I don't know if this will be... Well, I'll just ask you the question. How would it change your work if we had a UBI? I mean, obviously it wouldn't necessarily change what you're doing because you said you're in a sort of comfortable place to do what you want to do. But it would potentially affect your clients depending on the type of charity. But, generally charities are there to help people who are having lots of difficulties, and poverty is one of the major difficulties.
Yeah. So I'm going to challenge you on what you've just said. I am comfortable enough to be able to do this, but there's a finite lifespan to it.
Yeah, and also you have to have a constant supply.
I need a constant supply of clients. So I don't generate an income for thinking and producing. Generate an income for selling it. At some point, the money will run out. So a universal basic income, I would have done this sooner.
Yeah.
In one way, shape or form. And I would be risking less to do it. And actually, as a consequence, I would have been bolder in my approach. And that is to the detriment of the whole of society.
Yeah.
And not just because it's prevented me from taking that leap, but because the lack of it prevents everybody from taking that leap. So I attended an accelerator program very early doors in this, organised by the remarkable people Greenborough management called the 10 by 10 Northern Max Accelerator. And it's a 7-week intensive mentoring program with a cohort of 20 other early stage startups. Mm. And there are people on my cohort who have put everything on the line because they truly believe that there's a better way.
Yeah.
They have an idea, and they are existing on handouts and working part-time jobs, multiple part-time jobs, and not knowing where the next penny is coming from, and still putting everything into trying to make a success out
everything
of that idea.
Can, given that all of their mental faculties and their other things are being stretched in all these other directions as well.
And, there are people from that cohort who I'm still in touch with and regularly meet with, and who I believe that their idea has legs.
Yeah.
And yet I worry for them because I worry that...
Well, you know the market and you know that people won't see it. And they won't see what you can see.
Yeah. And I worry that they will hit the end of the runway too fast.
And it's really hard. It's a much harder up here of a city like Leeds. It's a big northern city. It's the second biggest financial centre outside of London in the country. But it's still finding the people, finding the pots of money and the finances and the people that will invest and the people that are investing having the vision and taking the time to actually think and rather than just go along with what everybody else is investing in. London has that. We don't have you might find bits of it, but not at the scale. You can do that in London much easier because you'll fall over people with pots of money and people who are doing things, or someone who's already doing that, or someone who's tried it, or do you know what I mean? It's more because everyone's there just jammed together and everything's there. So that's it's always hard, but I think it's even harder when you don't have that infrastructure there and you have to kind of find it from nothing.
I talk a lot about the idea of what is the worst that can happen. And this comes from years of experience in client services where you have a client on the other end of the phone who is beating you up over something being late. Yeah. And invariably, I've come to realise that the worst that can happen is that it's delayed by 2 days and we don't get paid for another week. And there's a lot to unpack in that statement. But generally speaking, when you're selling T-shirts and the update to the website to...
No lives are on the line here.
No lives are on the line. So what's the worst that can happen? I am, like I say, really incredibly fortunate to be in a position where I can say that with a degree of confidence. And, don't get me wrong, I look at the numbers once a week and worry about, how long I've got before I need to start making changes. And it's fine now, but
things can change quickly.
We're in early stages of the business. And then I talk to peers who are at a similar stage in their business, but, who are struggling with it and who have not got that safety net in place. And genuinely, my heart goes out to them because because there is nothing for them. There isn't a safety net. There isn't the ability to say, I will meet the mortgage payments at the end of the month. They are, literally talking to people who are, I do not know if I can eat next week.
Yeah.
And they have businesses. Why do we live like this? Yeah, businesses which, actually have meaning and impact and do change the way that people work and think about things, and, which have value and which will bring employment and all of the positives, and the thing that is stopping that from happening, the thing that is stopping that from taking place is the risk. And so a universal basic income for me feels like an absolute no-brainer. I think the other thing I saw was somebody said that, I think it's an American economist who suggested that every child in America should be given $1,000 in a trust fund when they're born.
Do you remember the Child Trust Fund thing that Gordon Brown brought in? That was the single best piece of legislation for saving that was ever introduced in the country. It was the most successful, savings thing that ever happened. It was a great idea. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you think about Gordon Brown. That in itself was a great idea. Yeah. And the people that did have it, they became junior ISIS and stuff. But that was in terms of the future, that was genius. Just £100 now and let it compound interest.
I think that was it. There was an economist who said the state, the government, puts $1,000 into an account for every child, and compound interest by the time it comes to maturity means that child has a cash sum of tens of thousands of dollars, and the benefit to the state is exponentially higher for all sorts of reasons. There's financial security in there, reduces strain on the public services. It means that cash is then going back into the economy after gathered interest. So there's all these net effects, and nobody will ever implement it. Because it's seen as a handout. Yeah, it's genuinely the worst.
The argument's purely moral. It's a purely moral argument. You don't deserve to be paid. You have been.
It's not. How is that a moral argument? No, I don't think that is a moral argument.
The thing is, you are not good enough to have money. Therefore, you've morally failed. Therefore, you should go and die.
That's not. But it isn't a moral. It's not a moral argument. It's a value-based argument. You do not deserve to be. We do not give handouts. You do not deserve a handout. You do not deserve to. Honestly,
the government
exists.
I grew up in a situation believing that governments were there to sort of do stuff for you instead of just do stuff to you, which is what they seemingly are now.
Yeah. I don't understand why we're not looking at it that more seriously. I do understand, because it would.
But there's all these
Can you imagine the uproar? Can you imagine the uproar if we introduced UBI? Just
the papers. Well, just the papers.
I'm literally just in the back of my head, I can hear it.
Yeah, all the BBC anchors are on knocking on for $500,000 a year or whatever, and they're like, "Oh, well, I think it's terrible these people getting free money and stuff. Free money from the state. What do you do?"
That in itself is a value judgment, and I think that we need to be careful about framing it in those terms, because those people get paid for the value that they contribute to their employer, and then we have to recognise that. And I have some issues with the commodification of things, like football. So, Premiership football, the salaries I think are disgusting, but actually they're proportionate to the amount of revenue that they generate for their business owners.
And so, the number of people they're entertaining. And
So, there's a. I think there is an argument to be made for that. Although, I think if you were to ask Man United's players to collect their weekly salary in cash by walking into the middle of the pitch at the end of every game and picking it up in a suitcase, it would probably change the way they play. That sort of thing. So I've heard that argument before as well, but. Even your framing, your reference there, it's a value-based framing and reference. There's no morality around that. If you want to talk about morality, talk about Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk, who between them could end world poverty overnight.
Well, one of them,
and that's immoral. That is immoral. I quite like this idea of, when somebody hits $1 billion, everything that they earn over that should just be, recycled, because you've won capitalism.
Well, exactly,
literally, what on
Give
earth
them
are
a
you
big
else?
medal, and then go, right, get lost now.
So there's that side of it. But universal basic income does feel like a moral conversation, and it does feel as though we pay a lot of lip service to being morally more mature than we were 200 years ago. But I struggle to see the evidence
in
for
practice.
it. And that's across the board, and it's across governments, and it's across nations. There's still and I'm by no means a socialist, but I think the term is social capitalist. There is a better way of doing it, and I think a UBI is certainly something that should be considered far more seriously, and especially as we look towards an aging population as well, and we are moving into an era of having to rely on people having an adequate pension in order to be able to grow old gracefully, and that reality doesn't exist for most people. So a UBI would tackle that immediately. But you need to...
It's not a panacea, is it? It's not going to solve all the problems in the world, but I think, out of the various stuff that's discussed, and this one being one that's not widely discussed, I think it's better than most of the stuff that you get coming from the London papers to talk about.
Yeah. And if we want the UK to be focused on innovation and not production, then we need to give people the freedom to innovate. And you don't innovate when you're scared of failure. And the main reason people are scared of failure, and the reason I was scared of failure, is because I couldn't afford to fail. I still can't afford to fail, but I can afford to take longer about making sure that doesn't happen. And so I have
and you can take a more calculated risk as well.
So I have the benefit for me there. But what incentive is there for my stepson, who is 23, to innovate? At the moment, he survives just. So, he's bright, he has ideas, he wants to do things.
It's the invent an app and become a millionaire, isn't it? It's like, that's your innovation thing. Here you go, that's what you do. It's like, well...
But that's not innovation, that's repeating what somebody else has done.
Exactly.
It's repetition.
And it's not a viable route for any, other than a tiny, tiny proportion of the population. Not a viable route for anyone. So what are the real things that you could do? Like what? And it comes from both sides. It's that sort of going back to the, people not working in offices, not developing those, as employers like to say, work-ready skills. But then the flip side of that of not having proper entry-level jobs where you bring people into the workforce, train them up, show them what it's like to be working. It's very similar to school, but there are big differences. And that the way that you work in a workplace, there are expectations and so on that you have to go and you have to experience for that. So
he benefited hugely from the apprenticeship scheme, and continues to. And he's done. He's exceeded his sort of minimum requirements for his apprenticeship in hairdressing. He's done further qualifications through it, and it has. he has become a much better employee as a consequence of being, that structure. And I don't mean compliant. I just mean that he's had
it's knowing the
exposure and
expectations, isn't it? And it's knowing the right and the wrong thing to do, and knowing that that's professional and that's not professional. And just those little things. Like a lot of it's manners and etiquette, isn't it? Like the way that we do this. So I'm going to wrap up there. I'll give you the opportunity, but I think the answer is going to be no. But is there anything that you want to talk about and say anything before we?
No, I'm good. I thoroughly enjoyed the session. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure to talk to you. Yeah, and we could have gone off in all sorts of different directions.
I think so.
With all sorts of things there. Where can people find you? Do you have the socials and stuff to hand? You've got them memorised.
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn.
They will be in the show notes as well.
Yeah, so they're in the show notes. My LinkedIn is there, Kingsbury Consulting LinkedIn profile, or www.kingsbury.consulting for my website. Some articles on there which are interesting if you're into the theory of digital leadership.
If you've listened all the way through this episode, you will want to read those.
I hope so.
Anyone that's listened to the conversation that we've just had will be interested in that.
I hope so. Thank you so much.
Thank you again to Michael for being my guest. Thanks, as always, to all my guests. And thank you to you, Leeds, for being my subject. You can find Michael at linkedin.com/in/Michael Guy, all one word, and linkedin.com/company/Kingsbury Consulting, again, all one word. Links are in the show notes as usual. There's no episodes next week. I'm giving you all a chance to catch up with me. So do your homework. Get through all the back episodes. You've got a week. Maybe if you listen to the whole thing, you might have something to actually say to me about it. Don't forget to donate to the project or to commit to the show by taking on a membership and covering some of the running costs to help keep it going. I've put all the prices up on the Patreon. We still have to get to 200 episodes, and this show has been on a precipice all year. Anything you donate will be a massive help. If you listen on the Captivate webpage for this show or on western-studios.com, then there's links for you to click through to the Patreon, or just go to patreon.com/c/working hours pod and pick the membership that you can afford and that helps the show the most. So Patreon starts at £6 a month. It's less than the price of anything you'd buy an hour of, and I'm giving you hours of local historical content each month. None of these are up to date, but they're all still relevant. Donate any amount or buy a membership via the donate button on the Captivate player, which will take you straight to Ko-fi, Ko-fi, kofi.com/working hours. Minimum tip on there is £3, and you can still get a £1 membership there. Remember, I'm making content that promotes Leeds, gives Loiners somewhere to talk, gives Loiners somewhere to get free, relaxed media experience, gives guests more than an hour of free content they can use on their socials, and you'll be a part of that as well. If you'd buy me a drink or a snack in the real world, which you would, then you can do it online. Please do it online. If you buy a membership on either site, please remember you can cancel at any time. If anything, you'll need to make an effort to stay a member with these platforms. But for the time that you are a member, it will be a massive help. Honestly. Also, if you want anything from the show you're not getting in order to make you donate to it, or if you just want something read out on the show for free, then get in touch. I'm open to feedback and accountability. If you'd like to contact me about anything working hours related, then you can email me about the show at, you know it by now, workinghourspod@western-studios.com. Okay, that's me. Remember, listener, no matter what you do, it's impossible for you to understand anything that your salary depends on you not understanding. So try to work for peace and try to plan with kindness. Raise your voice, but reduce your impact. Cheers, ears. Take care out there and be kind to each other. Leeds. Working Hours is produced, recorded, edited, created and published by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org. Remember, Western Studios Leeds Limited when you're ready to start making your content in West Yorkshire. Follow Western Studios Leeds on Facebook, facebook.com/Western_Studios_Leeds, and on LinkedIn, linkedin.com/company/Western-Studios. Bookmark western-studios.com so you can see the latest prices and use my contact page to drop me a message about your own podcast project or working hours at any time from anywhere. Maybe you want or need a podcast host, co-host or narrator for your podcast project. Maybe you just need another voice for one or more episodes of your show. Podcasts are so much more than gossip, book promotions and marketing for online courses. Podcasts and other audio content get your online brand out there. Want to make some fundraising case studies? Want to have an audiobook or video course? Want to share your learning, knowledge and expertise in your field? Want to learn, teach or raise awareness of something general or particular? Want to improve internal comms with messages your staff might actually engage with? Or do you just want to brighten up the world with some entertaining content? Then make a podcast. If you're making your podcast within West Yorkshire, then think about making it with western-studios.com. Whatever your podcast questions or needs, get in touch with Western Studios Leeds.